good morning, Minister, and thank you for joining us and agreeing to do this interview. I know our delegates were looking forward to seeing you and hearing your plans, but unfortunately, I know due to prior commitment that you weren't able to attend today. So welcome to our conference, and thank you for agreeing to do this interview.
Well, that's very kind, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for this interview. And I'm sorry I can't attend the conference in person, but as ever, it looks like a great programme.
That's great. Well, Minister, I think September will be 1 year since you've been appointed as Minister for Children and Families. I know you visited several earlier settings, met with their staff and children and spoke to parents. And what's been the most significant thing, would you say, that you have learned, but how did that kind of shape your thinking in terms of childcare policy?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it has hugely, and I know the word's been used a lot, but the past couple of years have been unprecedented. And on the visits that I've been on, I've and the number of early years educators that I've met, I've been overwhelmed by the dedication, the determination, the passion, and also the compassion of people working in early years, just really to keep things going. You know, you as a sector that have kept children safe and learning. You've enabled parents to manage work and family life in some really challenging, in fact, very challenging circumstances. In terms of things that I've learned, I think the importance of recruitment and retention of staff is something I hear about a lot. We very much want to work with the sector to make working in early years a really attractive career choice to help meet the increase in demand. And I'm really keen to better work with the sector to understand some of the challenges and the situations, and hear any suggestions for how we need to be responding and support you as a sector. I think some of the other things that I've sort of picked up on is that, having visited settings, safety and quality should always be at the heart of our thinking. I very much take the view that we've got to have a system that in no way compromises on that, but we've got to have a system that gives flexibility and autonomy for settings to use their own professional judgment, because you know best about how to care for and educate and meet the needs of the children within those settings. And it's incredible to have seen so many diverse settings that are in different sized buildings, and all sorts of differences really that make every single one unique. And I suppose I've also picked up the importance of keeping up the profile of people working in nurseries in the earlier sector, which I recognise is just hugely important. And I'm really interested in developing longer term approaches to ensuring that early years provision works the best it can for families and gives every single child that fantastic start in life that they deserve. So I'm really keen, and I very much want your help in terms of shaping my and the department's thinking around things like recruitment and retention, so we do develop a system for the future that is really responsive and has capacity in meeting need, including, of course, with the SEND review ongoing at the moment, and the green paper, the provision for and meeting the needs of children with SEND. So I'd be really interested to hear about the suggestions and ideas that are generated at this conference. But I suppose more than anything, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone working in early years.
Thank you, Minister. And last week when we spoke, you were travelling to Sweden that afternoon, and I know you visited other countries, including Scotland. What is it that you've seen that is different from UK? And also that you just mentioned that, you always see, safety of children at the top of your agenda. And of course, how will you make sure that is actually maintained, especially with the ratios consultation that's going to be published soon?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really good question, and and I try to get out and about as much as possible, mostly across England, and I've visited so many brilliant settings, and that's been fantastic to see. But I suppose it's also important that we look at some of our international comparator countries to see how they do things ever so slightly differently. And there is certainly some similarities, but there are also some differences. And in terms of our thinking, there's sort of thinking in the sort of short to medium term, and then there are thoughts about what we should be looking to do in terms of change within the sector over the medium to long term, and some of that thinking which does take some time to build an evidence base about an approach. So hence why, as you know, and you rightly reference, I've visited both the Netherlands and Sweden and Scotland, and I'll be in France later this month to see how they're very much whistle stop tours. So usually within a day. So it's out there meeting usually my ministerial counterpart in country, and then visiting a number of settings, and wherever possible, and we've been fortunate we've been able to do it, meet also with parents and the settings to sort of, the parents bit's important because to get an understanding of how they feel about the early years provision in their country. And I suppose in terms of reflections, the first thing I would say is that the more I've seen across the other countries that I've been to, and it's not a reflection so much on theirs, but on ours, that we do genuinely have a world-class early years sector, and that is something that we should mark and celebrate. That being said, I think there are some things that, I do think we can continue to learn from other countries on. So for example, you reference it, we do have a relatively tight regulatory system, and we should, I suppose, constantly challenge ourselves on whether we're allowing sufficient space for providers to use their own professional judgment. After all, as I said, the previous response, you are the experts. And as you rightly pointed out, and as you'll have heard, we are planning on consulting this summer on mirroring the Scottish ratios for 2-year-olds, and we'll I can certainly assure you we'll put out more detail on that soon. But I can also assure you that we'll be fully engaging with the sector, as I promised to do, throughout this consultation process. And I think the one thing I'd say at the outset, and I've said this a few times in the House and when we've met privately as well, that our priority and my priority continues to be the provision of safe, high quality early years for our youngest children. And as you know, all early years providers are legally required to keep children safe and to promote their welfare. And this remains, certainly to me and the government, and I know to you, the most important thing, not least for the most disadvantaged children in our society. And I suppose on this front, since the pandemic, as you know, the government's committed around 180 million to recovery programs to improve things like early language and to train early years staff. And in my mind, that's obviously got to be a sort of continued focus. But as I said, when it comes to the ratios question, I think it's important we continue talking throughout the consultation. And as I say, I promise to very much listen and work with the sector as we run through that consultation process over the summer.
I think that would be very reassuring, I'm sure, for all of us, Minister, and people in the sector. We talked about SEND, consultation and the review. And I think the major kind of, consultation that sector has been waiting for quite a long time, and recognizing and supporting children with additional needs is an absolute priority. And of course, providers are telling us that they are struggling both financially and also support-wise at a local level to be able to meet the individual needs of all children. How will you make sure that the response after the consultation and the plans that you're going to put in place will address those challenges and make sure that all the children who deserve the best get the equality of access and the high quality of care that they need, but most importantly, support for families as well as support for providers?
Yeah, it's a really Great question. And the first thing to say at the outset is the consultation is on the SEND review is live, and that's live until the 22nd of July. And I'd encourage as many of your members to take part in that, or anyone who has experience of early years and SEND in particular, to take part in that consultation. It's so important that we get this right, and getting it right means hearing from as many people with that lived experience of the system as possible, so we can make sure that we're on the right track with the ambitious reforms that we have planned. And the plan is, so once the consultation closes on the 22nd of July, we'll then analyse those responses. I think we've had 700 or 800 or so responses so far, submissions, and I hope to have many more. There's usually a flurry towards the end of any consultation period. They'll analyse those, and then we will come forward with a full implementation plan reflecting what we've heard in the consultation towards the end of the year. But in terms of specifically relating to early years, I think there's no doubt in my mind that a strong early years education has consistently an evidence-based approach been shown to be fundamental to the strengthening of an individual's school readiness, their educational attainment and potential, and of course wider educational standards, which is why one of my priorities since coming into office at the Department of Education has been the SEN review, which, as you know, was long overdue in part because of the pandemic. I mean, we launched the initial review back in September 2019, and then the green paper we published in the first quarter of this year. And what you've been telling us through the SEN review consultation is hugely helpful in shaping our, and indeed my thinking. And our aim throughout the review is to improve better take up of things like health checks in the early years in terms of identifying need, and improved joint working and data sharing across education, health and social care, which will help make sure the right support is in place as early as possible. So in terms of some of the changes we're proposing, strengthening specialist SEND expertise, for example, by increasing the number of level 3 qualified SENCOs in early years settings. So with training delivered to up to 5,000 SENCOs by August 2024. And then we've also committed to conducting a review of the level 3 early years educator qualification, and separately we'll increase the number of SEND qualified level 3 practitioners in early years. Other changes specific for early years. So we'll also ensure that early help is more accessible for families and children with SEND. So that includes things like our championing of the Family Hubs programme, and the £500 million that we're putting into that programme to ensure that there's a family hub network in over half of all local authorities up and down the country. And that's important because it's to be used as a means for accessing integrated support for children and young people with SEND all the way up to the age of 25. And then as well as this, we've increased the value of the Disability Access Fund, or the DAF, which for 2022-2023 will be at least £800 per eligible child per year. And as I said, I mean, I'll conclude from where I started. The consultation is live at the moment. It closes on the 22nd of July, and I really hope and encourage as many of your members as possible, especially those who work in and have experience of SEND, will engage with it and tell us what you think, because that's the way we're really going to make sure that the reforms we're proposing that we're getting right.
Absolutely. We're hosting an event as well on Send Review for our members, and we are hoping to get maximum response for that consultation as well as the ratio consultation. You talked about the long-term view and long-term strategy. That is something that NDNA has been talking about and have been lobbying all parties to look at, putting the child at the center of the policy, and where do we want to go, and how do we want to resource it, and how do we want to deliver this, which is really important. Your recent visits to other countries, the SEND review, and of course the ratios review, would that help you to kind of shape that long-term view and policy? And would you engage with the sector at regular intervals to be able to shape that policy?
That's certainly the plan, and I'm always very happy to engage with the sector as we develop a medium to long-term strategy. I think, I mean, ultimately, we want families to benefit from the childcare and early years support that they're entitled to. Um, in part because it helps to save them money, but also it's really important, as you and I know, in terms of helping give their children the best start in life. And we've got to ensure that childcare in early years works the best it possibly can for families' lives now. And the government's committed to continue to look at ways we can improve the cost, the choice, and the importantly also the availability of childcare. So we're going to continue to work across government to ensure that parents are given the information they need to access support from things like tax-free childcare, the universal credit childcare, and our own DFE entitlements, and actively consider ways we can ensure that there's a sufficient supply of things like childminders, giving more parents access to affordable, flexible types of childcare. But where you're right is we also want to create further future flexibilities which will enable parents to be able to spend government funding on the childcare that best meets their individual needs. But I think, as you rightly point out, children must be at the heart of this and the heart of our thinking at all times. And on top of the spending of just the DFE entitlement element, which is £3.5 billion in each of the past 3 years. We're investing up to 180 million, as I referenced, on recovery support in the early years sector, and we will build a stronger, more expert workforce, enabling settings up and down the country to deliver high quality teaching and help address the impact of the pandemic. But I think where you rightly point out, there's a lot more to do in terms of our thinking for the medium to long term. This is very much the beginning of a journey, and what I'm going in terms of the visits I've made overseas so far is just seeing how things are done ever so slightly differently, and how they're viewed both across their society, but also by parents and businesses, because I do think we do need to be looking at some broader medium to long term reform in this area. Of course, that means building an evidence base, especially if inevitably we'd need to have conversations with the Treasury. Anything has to be evidence based and represent good value for money for the taxpayer. So I can certainly commit to continuing to work with the sector as I develop and the department develop its thinking about the future and what future models of childcare and early years could look like.
That is brilliant, and that we will be behind you, Minister, to support you to shape that policy. And I'm sure all our members are as well, because they are the ones who are actually delivering this at the front end. And we talked about, the recognition for the workforce, and we were hoping if you were here, you would have launched our campaign. And as you know, we're setting up a huge campaign, a year-long campaign, and it's called First 5 Years Count. This is a non-political campaign, and the aims are really to encourage parents to really understand the value of child development and the high quality childcare, what that means to their children, but also to encourage them to take up places as well. And most importantly, change that public perception in terms of what high quality childcare really means. So I hope you will endorse this. We've been talking to your team and also other government departments as well. So I hope that you will be promoting this campaign along with everybody else, because we are doing this, like I said, whole year long campaign across UK. So to all political parties, we are basically engaging with them to make sure that they spread this message as well at the same time. So I hope you will endorse and support this for us. And last time when we had our conference, that was 3 years ago. So it's great for us to be able to get back together again and share some of these, expertise and the ideas, and of course their experiences as well today. But most importantly, we had Elaine Wiley from Scotland talking about the Daily Mile. And I know you're a great campaigner and advocate for, physical activity, and of course with, addressing child obesity and issues like that. So I just wonder, have you actually managed your colleagues in the corridors of power to actually take some power walks outside the corridors of power?
Well, it's very much work in progress on that one. But I mean, let me just go back to the end of your previous question very quickly, because the so on the importance of the sort of early years, and in particular the sort of 0 to 5, I think I very much recognise that. And not wanting to name drop in any way, but it was a very special meeting. Recently, I met with the Duchess of Cambridge, who you'll know is incredibly passionate and engaged on this subject, and we had a very good session on exactly this. In that, how do we change the perceptions around the importance of those early years, not just across the sector actually, but also to business and for parents. So I think there is a huge amount of work that we can and should be doing in that space to show that actually although for many parents it happens to also be childcare, it is also early years education, and it's of fundamental importance. So I look forward to engaging with you on your campaign on the sort of Daily Mile. As you'll know, I'm a sort of late convert to running, and a keen runner now, and sort of sport and fitness and exercise. And I'm still working on getting the Prime Minister and my Secretary of State doing the Daily Mile up and down number 10, up and down Downing Street and outside number 10. But I think they're sort of committed in principle, but we just need to pin down a date, because yeah, Elaine, as you said, is hugely inspirational. They're marking 10 years now of the Daily Mile, and it's something that I want to see rolled out to more and more schools, but also early years settings wherever possible. And the great thing about the Daily Mile is you don't need very much space in which to do it. You just need to be moving for 50 up to 15 minutes every day, and you don't need to get changed. You just wear whatever you're wearing and whatever shoes you're in. You can walk, hop, skip, jump. It doesn't really matter, as long as you're moving, and an average person will do about a mile in 15 minutes. And I think one of the reasons this is sort of important, and there are many reasons, but tackling childhood obesity is of course incredibly important, both to me and to the government. And ensuring that our very youngest children are encouraged to be more physically active, and more importantly to enjoy being physically active, is undoubtedly one of the many positive things that we can all do across education to help with this. And it's one of the reasons why physical development is one of the 3 prime areas of learning and development within the early years foundation stage framework. And as far as I'm concerned, being physically active will I'm in no doubt help enable children to pursue happy, healthy, and active lives. But it's also just brilliant for mental well-being for children, and indeed for staff in settings, getting outside in any weather, and getting those endorphins flowing, and feeling great about having been active, and yeah, also it's notable how alert you are as well, having been out and spent some time outside running, so, or just moving. So I very actively encourage your members to wherever possible take part in the Daily Mile, because wherever I've seen it done, the children absolutely love doing it.
Absolutely. Lots of nurseries already do that. And I think that physical activity is absolutely crucial, like you said. Well, thank you very much, Minister, for doing this interview today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon, and continue with these conversations. And the Secretary is there, to help and support, to kind of shape that policy, as I said. And do you want to give a last final message to the delegates here today?
Yeah, I certainly would. Thank you. And thank you very much for your time. And sorry again, I can't be with you in person, but I very much hope you enjoy the conference. And I suppose I'll end with how I started, which is to say a huge thank you. Not just everything you've done over the past couple of years under the most challenging of circumstances, but thank you for everything you currently do and will do. And please, don't underestimate how seriously I take the importance of what you do as early educators. So thank you very much. And I look forward to continuing to work with you and the sector.
Great to know you're on our side, Minister. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.